All right, perfect. So IEP Power Hour. And I'm really excited to do this training because personally, I have been in 3 IEP meetings in the last month for my own son. That's how quickly things can change. That's how often things can change. And that is the goal of this training tonight, is for me not only to break down in plain language what your rights are. And the packet itself is 45 pages long. So I will go ahead and change screens so you can see. You've probably all seen this packet if you've done an IEP with your child, or I know some people will just watch this to learn and educate. Maybe they're in the process of being evaluated, or potentially know their child will need one when they get in school. But it's 45 pages long. I checked it today. And you need a legal degree somewhat to read it. And so we do have some resources we've created that we will email out after this workshop as well, basically a checklist. And then tonight, my goal is to put it in plain language for you, but I've created a checklist with the statute number from these procedural safeguards, and we will attach that to the plain language we're giving you tonight, because you will see as we go through this, sometimes if you need to make a request or you need to escalate this to the state, it can add a lot of weight to that request if you say, according to statute, this is what I'm requesting. So we've put that in a checklist. I don't want to get into all of that tonight because my goal is to make this simple to understand. And I am going to go over the 8 essential rights, like the ones that you will most likely need to know. But there are a lot more. And so we will break this down. And if we need to do a part 2 of this training, we absolutely can. I will go ahead and put a few disclaimers out there because we like to put our recording on our resources. So who knows who will see it. I am not a lawyer. I am not a teacher. I have no special education degree. However, I have 2 children that have had IEPs. One is now in college. And I have done a lot of research and worked with a lot of advocates to understand this. So everything you learn from me is from a mother's perspective. Now, with that being said, Kaylee, our programs chair, is on the call. And she does have special education degree. Now, she's been out of that game for a minute. So some things have changed. But if we need to plug in and say, hey, Kaylee, am I correct? I absolutely will. If I don't know the answer to something or Kaylee's not sure, we will let you know that we don't know the answer, but we will help you find it. So I wanted to just, again, do this again so you can leave understanding, but also because the procedural safeguards in the state of Mississippi were updated October 2025. So only a few months ago. And not to say Mississippi Department of Education is hiding the update or schools are hiding the update, because honestly, the update was made in the parents' favor. It gave more clarity to the parents, but a lot of people did not know. I did not know. And so again, going to 3 IEP meetings in the last 30 days, I'm very quick to say, I don't need the procedural safeguards. Like at this point, I have them memorized, and I push the packet away because they have to offer it to you. They're supposed to. So if they don't, that is something entirely different. We will get into that. But just because they offer you the packet doesn't necessarily mean they explain it, right? I just happened to glance down and see October 2025. And I knew the previous update was like 2013. So I was like, whoa, okay, what's changed? So I pushed it away and said, I don't really need this. And then lo and behold, I was like, oh, there's been an update. I need to do research on that. So again, most of the updates were made in the parents' favor. It was just clarifying a lot of things like the recording laws and using more parent-facing language. So that is definitely something we will dive into tonight. And none of this is to bash a school or an educator, because if I'm being really honest with you, a lot of times I don't think it's that a school or educator doesn't want to help you. I think a lot of times they don't know if they can or they can't. So if you're getting pushback from, and that's not always the case, there are some pretty ugly cases, but a lot of times when you're getting pushback from the schools saying, oh, we can't do that, that's something we can do, I doubt most of them have this 45-page packet completely memorized. And so they probably don't know. So that's part of your role, and you'll see the little arrows there, how it connects, right? That's part of your role as a parent to, oh, yes, you can. And so I will use some very direct language tonight. And it's not to start a riot. It is to empower you to really step up and say, I think you can check, let's check right here. Let's check this packet. So let's just dive right into it. I'm sure we will have a lot of questions that will come even after this. But the big picture overall is procedural safeguards are your legal protections. So federal rights under the IDEA law apply to every child with an IEP across the United States. And so one thing about procedural safeguards are there are the federal regulations, and then states can add to that. They can never take away from it. They can never take any of those rights away from the child, but the states can add to it to be more clear. They could set different, maybe like a stricter timeline for the school, but they cannot take away from it. So the federal rights always fall under the IDEA law. Now, they're kind of like the rules of the game. Okay, they're the playbook that kind of governs between you and the school district. So they're the guidelines to where you might request something as a parent. Okay, well, my child really likes to wear Crocs every day. And, it could be silly things like that. It could be things like my child really struggles with writing. Can we look at how he can take his test without having to write, or what kind of accommodations, right? And so it kind of gives the rules of what they can and can't do and what you can and can't do. And when it comes to these, again, we said it earlier, but schools are required to give you or offer them to you before an IEP meeting. So an IEP meeting does not have to just be annually. I know that's what most people think. It's annually, once a year we meet. Heck no, I've had 3 in the last 30 days to make small changes to his IEP. They're required to offer them to you, but they're not necessarily required to sit down and read them to you. I believe there is some law around, Kaylee, please pipe in if you know for sure, where they have to offer like an audio recording of them reading it to you. If for some reason you can't understand it. I know they used to have an audio recording that they would make me listen to, but they are not required. They're not lawyers. They're not required to sit there and say, here's what this really means, right? And so that's what we're here for. There's a lot of other resources in the state that also offer IEP advocacy. They will send an advocate to the meeting with you. There's a lot of trainings around this if you're looking for them. So the number one thing to really remember here is these rights protect 3 fundamental things. Your right to know what's happening with your child. School's not shifting your child around or changing things in their education or even their placement or behavior goals without you knowing. Your right to participate in those decisions, and we'll get into that tonight. And your right to disagree with those decisions when things go wrong, okay? So right number 1, I told you we're gonna go over the most important ones, is prior written notice, okay? So what this really means is the school has to tell you in writing at least 7 days before they change anything about your child's IEP, and invite you to that meeting or invite you to into that conversation before that change. And so this notice has to explain, why they want the change. Now, they don't have to go in super detail. They could just call a meeting, so to speak. But what other options are considered and how you disagree. So you have the right to disagree to that meeting. You have that right to disagree to attending that meeting. But the notice itself needs to give you 7 days before the meeting. So they cannot call you and say, hey, little Timmy had a really bad day. We need to look at his behavior goals. Can you be here tomorrow at noon? I know that they will. They have to me. And I get it. Teacher schedules are crazy, and they also want to get things changed quickly. But if I cannot attend tomorrow at noon, they cannot have that meeting without me if I make the request to say, hey, no, I would like a different time, right? Or there is the options. I was going to pull it up here. I just signed one today. You can have one, you could put on there, well, I can attend by phone. I would like a different time. There's different options. So we could pull one up at the end of the meeting if no one's ever seen one of these. But one thing I very commonly see is they will send you the prior written notice after the meeting or at the meeting. They'll slide it to you on the table and say, hey, can you sign this? And so again, a lot of times I don't think it's that anyone really wants to do the wrong thing. What I personally have seen in IEPs with Caiden is the teacher will reach out to me on Parent Square or whatever app the school is using, say, hey, we really want to make this one change on his goal. Can you come Friday at 1 o'clock? And I'll say, yes, that sounds fine. Well, they've got my confirmation, right? They've got my confirmation that I'm coming. And so they forget, or they don't think about sending the prior written notice. And so never happens. And then when I get to the meeting, it's like, oh man, we forgot. Here, can you sign this? Now, if I'm being really honest with you, a lot of times I will sign it at the table as long as I agreed with what we did at the meeting. If I don't agree with what we did at the meeting, or maybe they're wanting to make some drastic change that I need more time to think about, I will say, well, I didn't get prior written notice. So, we'll have to come back and I'll let you know in a couple of days. We'll have another meeting and I'll let you know my answer. Maybe that sounds manipulative, but the law is they have to give me written notice 7 days before. If they didn't, you can use it to your advantage. Okay. Now, you have to get the prior written notice before adding or removing any services. So before they edit anything on that IEP, before changing any placement or goals. So for example, in kindergarten, Caiden went in December, he moved to a different elementary school because that school had a specialty class. So obviously they could not move him to schools without having a meeting first, having my permission, us agreeing about that. And so even when they refuse something that you requested, so if you've made a request and they deny it for some reason, you still have to get prior written notice before you have that kind of meeting. Okay. So again, no change can happen if you disagree, with something they said. You want to request an IEP meeting, they have to give you that notice within 7 days. Okay. Again, there's options on there too. If for some reason no one's ever seen one, again, I just got one, so I can pull it up at the end of the call if we need to. Right number 2 is consent. Okay, so you get to control the yes or the no with a lot of different pieces of this. So they need your written permission to do a few different things. So the initial evaluation. If they see your child is struggling, no matter what grade it is, and they've never had an IEP before, they have to get your permission to do the testing of your child for special education eligibility. You as the parent can say, no, I don't want them evaluated. That is your right. If that's the case, then the child won't have an IEP. They won't be evaluated. They may bring it up later again, but at that time. Initial placement. So after the initial evaluation comes back, whether the school prompted you and said, hey, we would like to evaluate the child, or whether you made the request, either way, you're going to have a meeting for placement. Determining if the child's going to be, in gen ed 50% of the time and inclusion the other 50%, if they're going to be in a certain classroom, those types of things, any kind of services and accommodations as well. They need your consent on that. And that is you being involved in that first meeting. Reevaluation. So legally, they're supposed to reevaluate IEPs annually. They need to be updated, but additional testing like a BIP, like a behavior, what's it called? Like to update their behavior. So behavior profile, and I just did a full sensory profile for the OT. So any of those additional testings are supposed to be updated every 3 years. There's a big change or a big difference in between I hear the chat's going off. Maybe not. Okay. I know there is a big age or a big change in age between, 7 and 10. And that's what we're seeing right now personally in Caiden, is that his behavior goals were made on an evaluation done when he was just turning 7, and he's now 10. A lot of different behaviors in those 3 years. So they legally have to redo the evaluation every 3. But you as the parent can request, hey, I would like him to be reevaluated, with this behavior, or maybe it is they have specific testing where they get an autism ruling for the school, or maybe the speech evaluation, the OT evaluation. So you can request that in writing as well, but you have to give consent. So when they redid all of his behavior testing this year, I had to actually sign documentation saying I consent for you doing this testing. And then records release. So I very rarely see this. I don't know that Caiden's records have ever been shared outside of the school, but obviously as a parent, if for some reason maybe you wanted the records sent somewhere else, or maybe the child changes schools or school districts, then you would have to consent to that, okay? But you have the right to say no to any of these. You can revoke your consent at any time. You just need to put it in writing, okay? Schools cannot force you through due process to obtain consent for any of these services. Now, there's a few things that don't need consent, and now that I'm reading this back, I'll clarify the first one. So annual IEP reviews. So the school does not need your consent to have the annual review. That's required by law, but you do have to be invited to it. So you need to get your 7 days prior written notice to attend it. And then again, you can say, hey, that date doesn't work for me. I'd like a different date. Like, all of that is the same. But they don't need your consent to have that. They're required to do that. They don't need your consent for progress reports. Again, they have to track, depending on what your child's IEP says, whether it's daily behavior, daily grades, class observations. All of that can happen without your written permission. And the reason for that is because you agreed to whatever they're doing in the IEP when you signed it. So if the OT says, okay, she's going to work with Caiden 30 minutes a week, every week, well, obviously she has to come to his class and observe him and work with him. So you already kind of consented to that when you signed the IEP. Okay. All right. Right. Number 3, independent educational evaluation. So if you disagree with the school's testing, you can get a second opinion at their expense. This is a very powerful right, but you can expect pushback from them. Okay. So for example, if you made a request and said, my child is really struggling with speech, I would like to add speech to his IEP. They say, well, we evaluated him and we don't think he needs that. Then you can disagree with it in writing, okay, and say, I disagree with the speech evaluation and I would like to request an independent educational evaluation at public expense. They can tell you no, and there can be some back and forth in this. If they tell you no, they have to tell you why. And you still have the right to appeal that. You still have the right to fight that, okay? But most of the time, if you quote the law, again, if you put that statute in there, we're going to give you those, we're going to email those out after tonight, they won't argue with you, because if they know you're equipped with your rights, most of the time they won't argue. But once you get past that, they can pay for an evaluation or file due process to defend their evaluation. It can go either way. And then if you get them to agree, then you can pick a qualified specialist within the school's, reasonable criteria. So having a second opinion, really completely free to you, is a benefit to your child. The school district pays. The school has to consider those results in all IEP decisions. And then you can present it at hearings or at meetings, but you get one IEE per school evaluation. And so I have not exercised this right. I will be really honest with you. I've never exercised this in Caiden's now in 3rd grade. Until this year, I am considering it. So we are in the process of redoing all of his behavior evaluations through the school. I am waiting on those to come back. They've been in communication with me. They have to be scored. They have to, observe him in class in a couple different time periods. So I'm giving them about another week for those results. And just based on some of the conversations we've had in IEP meetings, I feel like we may need to have more than one observation behavior-wise, but we will see. So this is something that you can exercise as a parent, okay? Now, while we're here, one of the questions we have gotten on our Facebook page, it was a while back, was a parent asking about autism diagnosis. And so I want to kind of clarify that too. A medical autism diagnosis is not the same as a IEP autism determination, okay? And so one of the questions, it was a while back, but someone said, can I get an independent evaluation since the school district is saying my son doesn't have autism? Yes, you should, but it would be a medical doctor. You need to get a medical diagnosis, okay? So the IEP determination is an educational determination. You still should have a medical diagnosis to back that up. And that only supports your child through insurance and, you know, other things down the road, other support through the state to have that medical diagnosis. So just know that if your child does have an autism ruling through the school, that does not necessarily diagnose them with autism medically. All right. Number 4, access to records. Okay, so the school must provide access before any IEP meeting or hearing. They can charge you technically fees for copies if they make you copies or they're printing things out. But I have never actually had anyone charge me. So you have the right to access all evaluations, all test results, all IEP documents, meeting notes, progress reports, grades, discipline records, incident reports, any correspondence about your child. So like right now, Hancock is using Parent Square. If I wanted all messages about Caiden, I can make that request, okay? They do get 45 days to finish that. So once they say, hey, we're starting the IEP evaluation, or let's say your child's had an IEP for a while and they're doing a re-evaluation, they get 45 days to complete that. So they do have to have time to, again, do the testing, score it. I've never really had it take 45 days, but I'm sure in certain school districts it can. But you have the right to request these. Now, IEP documents, those types of things, that should never take 45 days because that should already be done. Those are just regular record requests. Example from me, I like to give examples. We recently had a teacher switch happen, and Caiden has gotten a new teacher in the middle of the year, gen ed teacher, and I'm very worried about regression because we know when you change his routine, we see some regression. So I usually keep all IEP documents, progress reports, grades, all of those things regularly. I have a Google Drive, I scan them in, but I went ahead and requested any notes, behavior charts, any documentation that I didn't already have, because I want to watch and see where are we currently at right now. And then 30 days from now, 60 days from now, if I start to see regression, I'm going to call an IEP meeting and I have some data to help me. This is where we were. You guys made a change mid-year and now look where we are. And so it took them about a week to collect all of that, but that's reasonable to me as long as, you know, everyone's cooperative and collaborative, because I know everyone's wants what's best for Caiden, but sometimes the school has to make decisions what's best for the school. And it's not always, Caiden's not the only child at that school. I understand that. I'm a reasonable person, but my job is to make sure the decisions are made best for Caiden, right? And your job is to make sure the decisions are made best for your child. So power move here, always, you know, request records in writing. I can't stress that enough. Put everything in writing, everything. An app, Parent Square, whatever your school uses to communicate, that's fine. But always make the request in writing. Don't call. And from my experience, it's kind of hard to get a teacher on the phone these days anyway. I know they're overworked and underpaid, so it's kind of hard to get them on the phone regardless, but always make the request in writing. Protect yourself, CYA, for those of you that know what that means, and just keep records, okay? If you find errors, you have the right to request corrections, okay, through an amendment process as well. So if there's any kind of errors there is due process, meaning you escalating it through the school. And if the school doesn't cooperate, if the state doesn't cooperate, you can take it all the way to the very tippy top of the government. There is amendments processes for that. Okay. So if you see any errors, always bring those up. All right. Right. Number 5, participate in meetings. So you are an equal member of the IEP team with full participation rights. And if I'm being really honest, I like to consider myself the leader of the team. I know there's a lot of teachers and educators that would be like, well, that's kind of, nope, I lead this team. I gave birth to him. I know what's best for him. I see him at school, at home, after school. I know my child best. You know your child best, right? So the school cannot make decisions about your child's education without making reasonable efforts to include you. So prior written notice, inviting you to a meeting, keeping you in the know, keeping you in the loop, all of those things, okay? Now, obviously, if you aren't cooperating or you're not responding to them, they probably have some legal rights to be able to do what the child needs if you're not cooperating. But there are certain things, and we talked about that they cannot do without your consent. So again, meeting notice, they have to give you 7 days written notice at a time that works for your schedule. This is another one that I heard a lot when I went to an IEP training held by Mississippi Parent Training Initiative last year, was that, well, I work all day, I can't ever make the meetings. I understand both sides because I used to work out of the office. I used to work in an office away. It was very difficult for me to get to those meetings. They do have to work around your schedule. However, I don't know that they're going to have an IEP meeting at 6 p.m. So it is one of those things where you might say, and they must have put it in Caiden's file because they know Fridays are the best day for me. So when they call me now about having a meeting, they always say, we know Fridays are best for you. Will this Friday work? Right? They know that works for me best. Again, you can attend by phone. I don't recommend attending by phone for the annual meeting or if there are several things they're going over. It is hard to feel included and sometimes to even hear. But if they're making a very quick change, for example, they changed one word in Caiden's IEP last week. It was a specific type of tool he's using to help with writing. They had that IOT wasn't available for that meeting, and they put the wrong name of the tool. And they wanted to correct it to keep it accurate because they know I would find out it wasn't accurate if they didn't. And so, long story short, they wanted to change one word. I attended that meeting by phone. That was super easy. Let's just change it. But again, they have to give you 7 days written notice. You are allowed to say that time doesn't work for me. Here are a few times that will. Okay. Bring support. I've always heard and had people that ask about bringing support. I've had, especially in the first year of Caiden coming back into school from full-time therapy, his ABA therapist attended a meeting. We've had his psychiatric nurse practitioner attend a meeting before, especially when there was something that they could help with, give input on. But I know a lot of people, especially if you're very confused or overwhelmed by these procedural safeguards, who will even just bring a friend, just someone else to be in there and, vent to when you leave and say, was I crazy? Like, did I hear that right? There are times it's hard to sit at a table and listen to all the things your child can't do. All of them are not always going to be, oh my gosh, they made this much growth and this much growth and this much growth. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. We've had some where he made astronomical growth and everybody was baffled. And we've had conversations about regression. And so you can bring an advocate. There are free advocates in the state of Mississippi. We've got some resources for you to plug into the checklist. Unfortunately, at Caiden's Corner, we don't attend meetings yet. Okay, I'll say yet because eventually I would love to bring that to Hancock County. We don't have the manpower to do that just yet. We are still recruiting help and volunteers. So at this time, we cannot attend meeting. We don't have a support person specifically for that. But we have a parent advocate. We have myself. Kaylee, between the three of us, you can send us an IEP virtually. We can review it and give you some help and tell you some things to ask in the meeting or ask for in the meeting. But at this time, we cannot attend meetings, but there are a lot of people that can. So MSPTI has advocates that can attend virtually. They are located in Jackson, but they will actually call into the meeting and do it virtually with you. There are some other resources. Again, we have them on the checklist for you if you want someone there in person. You can also request, therapist, an attorney. And again, just sometimes it's just having one other person there, because you can be sitting at a table with 8 or 9 people and it's just you. And sometimes just having another body there can make you not feel so outnumbered. Record meetings. So this is one of the things that was updated in Mississippi in October. They made it more clear. So if you want to record a meeting, you just need to give 24 hours advance notice. The school has to do the same, but you can record it. And so that is one of those things when you leave and you're like, I don't even know what all we talked about. I can't remember what they said. It is a protection move for you. And as long as everyone's following the rules, I don't see why anyone would not be okay with it being recorded. Another question that we get a lot is, well, my son doesn't have another meeting until April. Cut that. You can request a meeting at any time. Now, that does not necessarily mean that the school has to honor it, okay? But they should. As long as you say, I want to have an IEP meeting to discuss this, be specific in your requests, let them know why. You're not just calling a meeting to vent, okay? I've never been denied a meeting when requested. Might not happen immediately. Again, we require 7 days, so give them some time, right? But you can call a meeting whenever. You do not have to wait until annual or semi-annual to call a meeting. Okay. Again, if you can't attend in person, they either need to reschedule the meeting or they have to offer some sort of phone or video option. And usually that's on the little sheet that you sign, but you can also request a free facilitator to help manage very difficult meetings. So you can request that through the school. I had what I would consider a difficult meeting in July of this year. We had it right before school started because we know school starts earlier and earlier now. I had seen some issues last year. I drew concerns to them, and there was about 14 people in Caiden's IEP meeting in July. That was a pretty difficult meeting. I probably could have had a facilitator in it, but I had already documented all of my concerns in writing, sent it to them before the meeting, so there were no surprises. Hey, this is my concerns. This is what I'm going to be discussing in this meeting. Here's some time for you to review it ahead of time. And so the meeting, as bad as it could have went, it went really well because I gave them time to digest all of the problems that I was bringing to the table. And that gave them time to come to that meeting with solutions rather than me leave even more frustrated. So I will say, again, when you are discussing back and forth with the school, be as specific as you can in everything, in requesting documentation and requesting meetings. Be specific. I have a problem with this. I would like to have a meeting. Here are 3 dates I'm available so that we can come up with a solution on how, we're going to work as a team to make sure little Timmy doesn't continue to have this problem or whatever. But the more specific you can be, the better the solutions that can come to the table. And I will empower you there as well. Bring solutions, okay? Participate means you also bring solutions. And so, again, I've had several instances where the school has called a meeting for something they're seeing. It's usually behavioral when it comes to Caiden, different stems and things that might be bothering other kids in the class. And a lot of times they will say, we called this meeting to get your input. Is there something you think would help? So they are asking me for input. So you need to participate in the meeting and be an equal part at that table to help with solutions as well. All right, stay put pendency. So this is one that a lot of people aren't aware of, but Kaylee and myself have actually discussed a few different cases here on the US where parents reached out to us, or we were asked to help, review an IEP or whatnot. But this protection applies during due process. So due process means like the process of you, whether it's escalating it, going to court, having a hearing, whatever. Okay. So once you file for a hearing, meaning I had the IEP meeting, we can't come to an agreement, I'm going to escalate this to the state. Or maybe you see your school is not, they're not following the child's IEP. Okay, I'm filing for a hearing with Mississippi. That starts due process right then and there. Okay. The school cannot move your child to a different setting. They cannot say, well, little Timmy's mom got mad, went to Mississippi, to the state. So we're gonna put him in a different school, or we're gonna expel him, or we're gonna move him. They cannot move your child to a different setting. Okay. Their services and supports have to continue unchanged. So they can't say, well, Timmy's mom got mad and she didn't like the way we were doing speech, so we're just not going to do it anymore until we hear back from the state. No. Okay. And protection extends through the entire appeal process. So again, sometimes these hearings can take, I worked with a mom recently who filed well over a year ago, and they were just getting up to the very first hearing. It was taking a long time. And your child has to continue receiving their services, stay put in their school, and their IEP has to remain in full effect during that whole process. The school cannot retaliate on your child or cut services off because you escalated it. Okay. So no modifications can be made until the disagreement is resolved or you give consent. So there is an exception to this rule. Discipline removals exceeding 10 days follow different rules, and we're going to talk about that next, okay? But your power move here. Invoke this immediately in writing if the school tries to reduce services. So again, I would have thought I would never need this, but I've talked to multiple parents that have had to file for due process, from everything from the child having a tracking device to the child having said something that they didn't really mean. They didn't really understand what it meant, but it was perceived as a threat. I can see where this can be challenging, especially as they move into middle school and high school. And so if they try to make any changes, immediately in writing, I am invoking stay put pendency rights. This protection is automatic once you file due process. Okay. All right. Dispute resolution, you have 4 options. Okay. So when you disagree with the school, you have 4 ways to address a problem. Again, this is not usually, oh, well, I didn't like the way they, sent me an email. Like the 2, 3, 4 is when there's a bigger problem. Okay. IEP meeting is number 1. So this is going to be for minor disagreements. We need this fixed now. Request this in writing, fastest, least formal option. And that you're probably already doing that. Right? This can be anything from, hey, Caiden came home and told me that he hasn't seen a speech teacher or a speech pathologist in 3 weeks. What's going on? Like, I'd like to call a meeting. You go in the meeting, they're like, well, we now do it virtual. So he saw her, but he saw her on the computer. Real life situation. Okay. So all of that being said, you know how to do that. When that doesn't resolve something, then you can file a state complaint. So 60-day resolution through Mississippi Department of Education. This is where you're filing the complaint. The state tries to work it out with you and the school. They try to figure things out so that they don't have to go any further. Okay. This is best for when a school violates rules or has a pattern of problems. So maybe you addressed a problem last year. It got better for a little bit. you start seeing the pattern again, problems happening again, you address it again, it's not getting fixed. Okay, I'm filing a complaint. Or when they violate a rule, right? Maybe they move your child without asking permission, they do something without consent. Okay, I'm not even going to talk to them about, or, I'm not even going to try to work this out anymore. We've already had IEP meetings. It's not getting better. I'm going to the state. Okay. Your third option is mediation. So this is a stair step, right? This is scheduled within weeks, so it can take a while. And it's a voluntary process. So you go to the state's like, okay, we want to schedule a mediation to try to make this better. Or maybe the school tries to schedule a mediation. So a mediator is just someone who says, okay, your turn to talk, your turn to talk. I hear what you're saying, but do you hear what they're saying? Kind of like therapy in between. All right. And this is trying to preserve your child at that school, finding a middle ground. They do offer, the state offers some free mediators, or the school can have a mediator or hire a mediator, but someone to kind of help negotiate. All right. Step 4, that's the mamma jamma, is due process. And so 45 days after a 30-day resolution period can start due process. Okay. This is for serious violations. You and the school cannot compromise. There's a formal hearing, an attorney, often a judge, depending on how far it has to go. Okay. Again, I told you about a few different cases we've talked to parents on recently, but there was a child right up the road in Harrison County who had a tracking device called an Angel Sense tracker, and he has a history of eloping. The school did not allow him to have it, but it was a court-ordered item to begin with because the child goes between parents' homes, so the mom couldn't remove it because it was court-ordered. So the school said, well, he can't wear that here, he has to leave. And so obviously that's a due process problem, because it's like, well, I can't remove it. The judge said I can't remove it. What's the problem with the child having it? It was a disaster, and they're still in hearings, unfortunately, but they're having to go to court, all of these issues. Okay. So you can pursue multiple options simultaneously. So obviously, if you file a state complaint and the problem's bad enough that I also want to go ahead and start due process, I can. Okay. You have 2 years from when you first know about an issue to take action. So there is a statute of limitations. I don't expect anybody to memorize all of this. Okay. But we wanted to pull it out and just kind of explain it to you a little bit. Hopefully you never need 2, 3, and 4. I really hope you don't. But it's in the procedural safeguards for you to be able to pull if it gets to that point. Okay. All right. And right number 8, discipline protections for your child. So your child with an IEP cannot be disciplined in the same manner as non-IEP peers. Okay. Special rules and everything has nuances. There's no black and white, unfortunately, but special rules do apply to protect their educational journey. So, for example, the 10-day rule. Schools can suspend your child for up to 10 days per school year, mirroring what they would do for a Gen Pop kid. After 10 days, okay, educational services must continue. And they have to do a determination review. So, number 2 here is the manifestation determination review. Within 10 days, the IEP team has to determine if a behavior was caused by or had a direct substantial relationship to the child's disability or a direct result from the school's failure to implement the IEP. So let me give you an example of this. One of the parents we've talked to, and I'll be honest, Caiden says a lot of things that he doesn't really mean. A lot of his expressions and things that he says, he's pulled from movies or he's pulled from what he's heard other people say. And so his sister takes, his TV remote and he says, I'm going to kill you. He didn't really mean I'm going to kill you, right? That's not what he really means. That's his expression. But Caiden may not understand that if I say that at school, that can be considered a threat and I can get in a lot of trouble. So that is kind of an example here. Hopefully they would not suspend a child who's 10 when they understand that, but if they do. Now, that's when the team has to determine if it was related to his disability or the school didn't do something, or if it's just discipline. So another example of this is last year, towards the end of the year, a lot of teacher changes happening, and we saw some aggression from him. He's not an aggressive kid to where he just beats people up, but when he got frustrated, he would, and maybe whatever's in his hand would hit the ground, those types of things. So he never got the suspension, but we did have to determine, are these his behavior changing? Are we not doing something right with the IEP? And lo and behold, they hadn't been implementing his BIP part of his IEP, his behavior part of his IEP. Exactly. And so we let it go for so long that now we're seeing it escalate. That's a school issue. So they cannot take further discipline action on him because they failed him. They did not, implement that or track the behavior. That was the biggest problem, is they weren't tracking it. And so maybe the teacher was handling it the best that she could. Again, I don't blame teachers, but Caiden's not their only student. Handling it the best that she could, but she wasn't tracking it the way she was supposed to be tracking it. And so when it gets sent to the special education department, they couldn't see, okay, there's a downward trend here on his behavior. Maybe we need to reevaluate it. So no one could catch that this was going to get worse. So when they do have a determination review, if yes, then your child returns to their current educational placement. If it's determined, this behavior was related to their disability or a direct result of not implementing the IEP correctly, yes. If no, then they can proceed with discipline as normal. And so that case I was talking about, that's kind of what happened. The child said something that was perceived as a threat, and they determined, now he was late middle school age, they determined it was not related to his disability, and so they took further discipline action on him. The mother went back, pulled all of his data, and was like, no, and so she filed for due process. So that is where that due process part comes in, and you going to the state comes in, especially when the school maybe doesn't admit that they had some fault in it. All right. I know I've talked a lot. So a couple things. Documents you need to demand, all right? Prior written notice. You need to receive this at least 7 days. If you don't remember any numbers I threw at you tonight, remember that one. Before. If they say, hey, can you come tomorrow? You have the right to say, no, you're supposed to give me 7 days notice. I cannot come tomorrow. Okay. Meeting notes. So you have the right to request records of decisions and discussions. Who said what? Okay. This is crucial for accountability. A service grid. So you have the right to ask them to break it down. A lot of times IEPs are not specific enough. The child will receive inclusion services, 2 times a week. Okay, well, how long 2 times a week? What days of the week? Where is he going during that? What's he doing in inclusion? Like, there's a lot of things that are left very vague. You have the right to request it be more specific, and a service grid, okay? Level of performance. So you have the right to request that. Obviously, their academic, functional abilities based on their goals. So when you go into these IEP meetings for updates or annual, a lot of times they will say, oh, we're so excited, Caiden made, mastered this goal. We saw 120% growth. You're allowed to say, can you show me where you got that number? How are you figuring out that number? What are you measuring? What is it, grades? Is it behavior tracking? How are you where did you get that number from? You are allowed to ask that question. You should be asking that question. If not, anybody could pencil whip anything, right? And measurable goals. So I kind of already said this, but if you feel a goal is not specific enough, hey, I want more clarification on this. We just went through this with Caiden's a few months ago, where it was, we will be using tools to help Caiden with writing. Okay, what tools? How can the teacher execute it if we don't know what she's supposed to be using? You have the right to say, I want it to be more specific. I want it to be more relevant, more time-bound, okay? If they say in an IEP meeting, it's in the IEP, that's not good enough. You have the right to say, okay, show me where, explain to me where, point it out to me. Okay. You have the right. The PWN is a separate document that explains their reasoning and the triggers, all of those things. Again, we'll give you a checklist, but you have the right to question anything. They tell you we can't do that. You ask them, show me where it tells you you can't do that. And then if they show you something and you're not sure, send us a message. If we don't know, we will escalate it to people that we can find out. Okay. All right. I think this is pretty much the last slide, and then I'm going to wrap up with a couple things and answer all the questions that we had got on the registration. So the most common mistakes that I have seen just in the couple years of doing this. So signing without reading. Okay. I mean, I've always been told never sign a legal document without reading it, but I know it's a lot to read. Okay. I have always been told in all of the trainings that I have gone to, don't sign it at the IEP meeting. And so a lot of parents that I have met did not know this. So you go to the IEP meeting, it's an hour and a half long, y'all are hashing it out, you come to an agreement, they slide it to you and say, can you sign this? Every IEP meeting training I've ever been to says, don't sign it right there at the table. Take a draft home, review it thoroughly, okay? You got 7 days to respond after that point. So review it thoroughly and say, you can come back, call another meeting and say, you know what? I like the way this sounded, but now that I'm reading this draft, I don't like what's here. You have that right. You do not have to sign anything while you're in there. Again, I'll be honest, there have been several that I've signed right there. If we're changing one word, I don't need to take it home. But if it's a very long meeting or I'm very frustrated when we leave, I will say, okay, I'm going to take this draft home. I'm going to think about it, and I'll respond. Okay. You do not have to sign anything at that table that day. Not documented in writing. So verbal agreements are easily forgotten. Okay. Emails are your evidence. So there's been several times I've been in a meeting. One of those cases was last year. And we talked about updating his BIP after we saw some of those downward trends. And, we'll do it. Let's actually do it first thing next year because it's going to be a new grade, new teachers. We only got 3 weeks left of school. And I agreed with that. I said, okay, that's fine. Okay, we're going to make a note. First month of school, we still haven't done it, right? They may have made the note. I don't know. But if I would have had it, and if I would have sent an email when I left that meeting that said, just to be clear, we are going to do Caiden's reevaluation for his BIP by the end of August 2025. If I would have had that email evidence, that is one of the only times I don't remember that I did that. But a lot of times, if we discuss something in a meeting, I will go out to my car and I will type an email up on my phone to document it and confirm it. Now, if it's something that's written in the IEP, that's different. Waiting too long. So again, there's a statute of limitations for filing complaints. So if you go to file a complaint this year, you can't go back and say, well, 8 years ago, they did this. There's 2-year limitation. Not bringing support. So I do know we get a lot of parents that either mishear something or take things offensively. It's easy to do. I've done it myself. I have felt like I've been gaslit at the table before when asking questions or a concern's brought up. And I don't think it was meant that way, but that's how I perceived it. Again, it's me against 7 or 8 or however many are in there. And so if you feel like you leave those meetings frustrated and with questions unanswered, no resolution, bring someone. Okay. And then trust us. So I have a lot of friends that are teachers. I have family members that are teachers. I love a lot of the teachers that have been in Caiden's life, but trust us is not enough because ultimately they represent the district. They have to keep their job. Okay. And that's one thing that we see a lot is teachers maybe aren't willing to push because they're in fear of losing their job. They have to feed their own kids. Right. And so while I trust them as a person, I may not trust the staff that they're going to make a decision best for Caiden. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but there's hundreds of kids in that school. They have to make decisions best for all kids, not just mine. It's my decision, my job to make what's best for him. So always verify everything in writing. Okay. All right. So action steps here. And again, we will email out the checklist I made after tonight's call. So you'll get it to the email that you registered with. But I recommend that you create your IEP binder. Now, I personally don't have a binder anymore because it was getting so big. I have a Google Drive, and I actually talk about this in my book, how I set it up. But basically, I have 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, all the years. And I just drop everything in the Google Drive. I also drop medical stuff in there. Like, it's not just IEPs, but I keep everything digitally at this point. The school usually will email you copies of everything on SpedTrack, or I know Hancock does, so it makes it even easier. I don't even have to worry about scanning it in most of the time. But you need to have that documentation, because there have been many a times where I will pull last year's IEP and this year's IEP, especially at the annual review, and compare to see, you know, are the goals on track? Are we challenging him enough to make growth? Those types of things, okay? Document relentlessly. So email yourself notes if you need to, you know, however you create reminders for yourself. I'll email myself a reminder or something I think about at, you know, 9 p.m. Or if he gets off the bus and he says something and I'm like, oh, I need to ask about that, I'll shoot myself a reminder to email them, whatever that is. Take photos or videos of any kind of relevant situations. So if I never would have thought about videos really, but again, talked to a parent recently. The child was coming home with all kinds of bruising. Obviously, the school was not harming the child, but they were not keeping him from harming himself. And so the mom was requesting a behavior eval updated. The school was dragging, they were behind on it. And so she had photos and documentation of the child harming themselves and the school not, you know, updating the BIP. So if you're in that kind of situation, that's important. Save any text. I screenshot Parent Square all the time, put it in the Google Drive, and then timeline of events. So if there is something specific that you were trying to request, you know, you have the documentation to create a timeline. So again, I made a formal email end of last year and said, on this date, I made this request. On this date, we had this IEP meeting. On this date, this teacher responded in text. On this date, I was still waiting for a response. I followed up on this date. It is hard to argue when you come in prepared like that. Okay, it's very hard to argue with you. So, all right. IEP is a legal document, okay? Can't sometimes means won't, or they don't know. So push. Your child has a right to FAPE, which is a free, appropriate public education. Okay. I'll also send a copy of this out with the checklist as well, just because I know we kind of ran through it really quickly. All right, let me go over these questions really quick for the recording. And then, of course, if, you know, Kristen, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to plug me in. Between Kaylee and I'm happy to help. So one of the questions we had on the registration, it said, my son is turning 4 and his school is really great with him. I'm more concerned about what will happen when we transition from this school to kindergarten. Okay. I hear about schools often pushing back on things, and I want to be knowledgeable so that I can best advocate for him when this happens. Okay. So this is smart, preparing now. So not sure what school he's in. If he's in 4, he's obviously in some sort of preschool. I don't know if it is a specialized preschool or if he's going to like an IEP preschool at Hancock, or I don't think Bay has one, or even in a different district. I'm not sure. But a couple things you need to know before kindergarten transition. Okay. So if he currently has an IEP, which sounds like he does, request a transition IEP meeting. Okay, you can request that at any time. So if he's going into kindergarten in August, I would get that started like April at the latest. And I would say I'm requesting an IEP meeting to plan for kindergarten transition per, I'd have to pull the statute, 322, I think it is. I will confirm that. But I would do this, like I said, 3 or 4 months before kindergarten starts. And I would get everything in writing now. So all evaluations, current IEP, request any progress reports or any data they might have right now, because the school might try to say he doesn't need that anymore. All right. I would demand specific things in the IEP meeting before transition. And I use demand and just be firm about it. Okay. Student will receive current services during kindergarten year to ensure continuity. That was one of the biggest struggles we had going from full-time ABA to kindergarten. Was the environment was totally different. And so the school did not have to offer ABA. They didn't have ABA, but Caiden is the reason they hired more behavior support specialists, because I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. Okay. Specified the same service providers if possible. So speech, OT, have a plan for all of that. All right. And then invoke stay put rule if they push back. So if, once he's in kindergarten, they try to say, well, we don't have to offer these services, or, depending on behavior, whatever, you could say I'm invoking stay put pendency. And that means his services must continue while you dispute them saying he doesn't qualify for those anymore. Okay. So I would definitely meet with them now to create a plan and ensure that services are guaranteed. And if they say he doesn't need all this, or we need to adjust this, show me the data to support reducing services. Okay. Another question we had, it said seeking general information to better help parent or guardians have. Okay, so this question comment came from a service provider. So I hope this helps. If you have any other questions, let us know. Hopefully the resources we send out after the meeting will also help as well. MSPTI, Family as Allies, those are 2 really good resources as well for advocacy. Okay. How do I update my son's IEP and make sure that all of his accommodations are met? So this is the right question. I think we answered it tonight, but I'll recap. Send an email, request a meeting. So an email that says like, this email is to request an IEP meeting for my child per 300.322. I know that statute by heart. And again, that will be on the checklist. I would like to discuss, boom, 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 bullet pointed out, updating his current IEP goals, ensuring all accommodations in the IEP are being implemented, adding additional supports as needed. Please provide 3 to 4 dates and times that work for, or, give them 3 or 4 dates that work for you. And say, I would like, here are 3 or 4 dates that work for me in the next 30 days. Please send prior written notice to confirm the meeting date. Boom. Send that out. And then before the meeting, I would gather your evidence. So if there's a particular issue you want to address, what's not being met. Save any emails from teachers, create yourself a log. Here's the date. Here's the accommodation that should have happened. Here's what actually happened. So an example, October 15th, IEP says he gets preferential seating in class to control behavior. And, he said he was seated in the back of the room. It could be that simple, that plain language. I also would request, in case you don't have at least a week before the meeting, current IEP, progress reports, behavior logs, teacher observation notes, anything that's going to help equip you for that meeting. Okay. You can send an email for that and just say, I need these, before our scheduled IEP meeting, at least 1 week before our scheduled IEP meeting. And then at the meeting, I'm going to give you all a couple power phrases. And again, these are in the resources we're going to give you. The IEP states, specific accommodation. Can you show me the data that provides this being implemented? That's a power statement. Okay, this is when accommodations are not being met. I've documented 3 instances where this accommodation was not provided. This is a violation of FAPE. It's a power statement. Okay, I need prior written notice explaining why this accommodation is not being consistently implemented. These are all for when an accommodation is not being met. If they're updating the IEP, I'm requesting we add the specific accommodation to address the specific problem. What data do you have showing that the current accommodations are sufficient? I do not consent to removing this accommodation. You know, these are all be specific, okay? If they give vague responses, which is one that I hear a lot. Oh, we can't do that. That school won't allow us, whatever. That's not specific enough. Tell me or show me where you can't do that. Or a vague response on a goal. I need measurable criteria. How will we track this? What's the baseline data? When will I receive progress updates? I want monthly written reports. So be very specific. Again, don't feel pressured to sign at the meeting. And then after the meeting, I would send an email follow-up saying, thank you for the meeting. After reviewing the draft IEP, I have following concerns. If you have any concerns, if you don't sign it, get it done, okay? If none of that works, then due process. Start the complaint with the state. Last question, what are our options to make sure the IEP is being met, and what can you do if your IEP is not being met? So we went over a lot of this tonight, but schools count on you sometimes. Again, I don't always think that they're trying to do anything wrong, but it's a lot. You know, I could see where a teacher's supposed to, you know, uphold this IEP along with the inclusion teacher, and they've got 30 kids in the class or whatever. Like, I get it. But if your options to make sure the IEP is being met, request regular tracking. You can request, I want weekly updates. I want daily updates in writing. You have the right to request that, okay? You have the right to call a meeting whenever you want. So if you want to call a monthly meeting to review progress, you have that right, okay? What can you do when it's not being met? Then that is where we go into filing with the state, due process, mediation. But if that is really a concern about ensuring they're upholding it, I would be requesting records regularly. So this email serves as my request for the following: copy of my child's progress report, service logs, data collection, you know, and stay on top of that. If you put it in the IEP, how you want to receive information, if you want to receive it sent home, printed out by email, by text, whatever, you can. And you can do that as often. You can have it daily. You can request that daily. Okay. And if you get it put in the IEP, which is a legal document, and they skip a day or they skip a week, you do have the right to call a meeting and formalize the complaint about it. Again, a lot of times my complaints or my negative responses are based upon how things are going. I was getting like daily or weekly updates for a long time this year. And then we kind of got in the holidays, and there was 1 or 2 weeks that they missed, but Caiden was doing well. His grades were great. His behavior was great. So I didn't make a fuss about it. When the holidays were over, I brought it back up and said, hey, can we please get back to these regular meetings or these regular updates, right? But I have it in the IEP. So it's legally in a legal document for me to have the right to bring that up, okay? So again, if you have any other specific questions, let us know. But the only way for you to really ensure is to have the meeting and request the data for sure. Okay. All right. So a couple things before we wrap up, and then I'll open the floor if anybody has any additional questions. So if you did not fill out our annual community survey, please do that. I have got it on my calendar to do tomorrow. We're going to do some giveaways to people who have taken the time. I will email this out as well. I know some people might be on their phone actually right now, so they can't scan it, but it is pinned to the top of our Facebook page. This helps us create more trainings. We were doing most of our workshops like this in person last year. It got to be really hard for people to come in person. So we may, and tonight's topic was a long one. Okay. Normally we would not go over this long, but, and there's so much I couldn't even go over to be able to stay within the hour in 15 minutes. But please take a second to fill this out. This helps us kind of customize our programs. We've got a lot of things coming. I'm going to tell you about a few of them here in just a second. And lets us know how we can better support you. Okay. It'll ask whether you're a teacher, an educator, or a parent. There is a place for you to fill out this survey. It takes about 5 minutes, costs you no money at all. And it just helps us continue to bring resources. Okay. So like I said, I'll include this in the email. I wanted to tell you about a couple things happening really quick. Okay. So on the left, that is an AI generated photo. So don't get super excited because this is just a way for us to show kind of what we're going for. But if you haven't seen it, we are building a mobile sensory unit. Really, really, really excited about this. And we just purchased the trailer. So obviously AI kind of gave us like a concept of what our goal is, but it will have 5 different sensory zones inside of it. It's something we're going to be able to bring to community events and just have inclusion all over the community. It's going to literally travel with us. So we got the trailer. It's at the electricians right now. It's got to get electricity before we do AC and then flooring and then insulation, all things. But this is a big, big, big win for us, a big goal. If you happen to know of any businesses that would like to partner with us on this, you know, we have an Amazon wish list. We will have sponsorship opportunities. I know, you know, we're really, really, really pushing the walk on Facebook. We have not pushed this really yet on our marketing campaign because right now it's under construction, but it's getting electrical and we actually own the 24-foot trailer. It's a massive trailer. So we are super excited to be bringing the very first one to Mississippi. We just wanted to show you a little bit of behind the scenes tonight. Also, Audible dropped 20 United States and 20 UK codes in our inbox this week. So I do have an entire chapter inside What Now Mama about IEPs, and Audible gave us 20 US, 20 UK codes to give out for free. So if you want one of those codes, shoot us a DM on Facebook and we will drop it to you. They're one-time use, all unique codes. So there's not really a way for us to automate these. We have to send this code to this person and this code to this person. But I think we have 15 United States ones left. We have all 20 UK. So if you happen to know anybody in the UK, please, we don't want these to expire or go to waste, but you can get the Audible version of What Now Mama completely for free. It is everything I wish someone would have told me in the first year of Caiden being diagnosed. And it doesn't matter if your child's been diagnosed for years, I promise you will get something out of it. So we wanted to just mention that tonight, completely free for you to get that. Just shoot us a DM on Facebook and we'll send it to you. Teen Takeover. So we have been asked multiple times to have a teen event. And so here we are, March 1st, 12 and older, 1 to 4 at the Sweet Escape. So we do have limited spots available for that. If you have a child that's a teen or you know someone who's a teen that would like to attend, send them our way. I think we've filled about half of those spots so far. So we got about 10 spots left for teens to be able to attend. And it's going to be a really fun day. If you've never been to the Sweet Escape, I know Caiden's pretty upset because he's not 12. So he's pretty upset about not being able to go. But we wanted to make this special for teens and keep it that way. Another event that's been requested several times is a SIB shop. So we are in the process of planning a SIB shop for potentially May. So stay tuned for that. It'll be really fun at Domino's Pizza. The kids will get to make their own pizza and then have the SIB shop after that. So some fun events. We also have our annual event coming up in June, but the most important event right now is the walk. So if you haven't already, again, I'll send this out so you can have the link. But if you haven't already registered to walk with us, we invite you. It's free to walk. Okay. It doesn't cost anything to register to walk, but we invite you to create a team and invite your friends and family to sponsor and pledge to you and or walk with you. And every single dollar raised goes back into the mobile sensory unit and all of the events. We've got our Christmas event coming, the teen event coming, the SIB shop, this pizza and pieces again, and our 1-year birthday party in June. And every dollar goes back into the programs that we create. Okay. We also have vendor booths, food and regular vendors. We are in search of sponsorships. There's, logo will go on the back, on the banner. We'll do shout outs. We have a lot of opportunities to be involved with this. We got t-shirts, yard signs, you name it. So if you have any questions at all about the walk and community celebration, send them our way. We're happy to answer them. We hope you'll register and walk with us that day. It's going to be very fun. I did some research. It doesn't look like there's been an autism walk in probably a decade on the coast. And I did not, Caiden wasn't diagnosed a decade ago. He was just born, but I'm really excited to bring this to the community and to the coast to really drive awareness and acceptance. So that's it, you guys. I know I talked a lot. I talked fast. Kristen, did you have any questions just while you're on here live at all that I could clarify for you? I'm gonna turn this light off though. I'm sweating. You there? Haley, is there anything I missed that you would like to draw attention to?
Hi, I be easier just turn my mic.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you.
No, you're okay.
My son is actually just recently diagnosed with autism. They diagnosed him at level 2 with a speech impairment, ADHD with he's the impulsive type, and mixed receptive and expressive language disorder. A whole mouthful.
Yeah, a lot, right?
Yes, I don't know. I've talked to the people at the exceptional children department over at Hancock High School, and they're like, and I'm trying to get him in with the MSU Extension Pre-K program because he's only 4 years old.
Okay.
And the Office of the Exceptional Children tell me that the Pre-K program needs to go. We need to go through them to update his IEP. And then the pre-K program's like, no, you need to go through the Office of Exceptional Children. I don't know how to update his IEP. He does have a developmental IEP as of right now.
Okay. So I would make the formal request because where is he in the he's in the pre-K program at Hancock?
He was, we had some issues with the program, and he had some very negative learned behaviors from the program.
Okay.
So that's what made us seek out more extensive evaluations. We did the evaluation through the school. They said, oh no, he's nowhere near the spectrum. He just has a speech delay and a slight developmental delay. This program would be great for him, and we thought it was really going to be great. Well, we had a teacher change over the summer. We sat down with the first teacher for like an hour, going over his IEP, setting goals. I go in for meet the teacher, and it's a completely different teacher, and I had 5 minutes to talk to her about him.
So is he in preschool at all now?
No, we're hoping that he will start Monday when they get back from Mardi Gras break.
Okay. So where will he start?
He will be at South Hancock with the MSU Extension Head Start program.
Okay. So more than likely what the Office of Exceptional Children meant by we have to go through the preschool program is once the child has an IEP and they set accommodations, no matter the age, 3, 4, whatever, they have to give him those services unless you refuse them. And so Hancock's way of doing those services is having their special needs preschool so that all the kids get the services in one room. So they should still be able to provide those services though at the MSU extension. So I would put it in writing to the Office of Exceptional Children, and say, I need to have my son's IEP updated. This is my formal request to have a meeting. If for some reason they push back and say, oh, he's got to come back to East Hancock or wherever they have the other preschool option, you formally say, I disagree with that, and we will pull the statutes for you on what's required. But they have to provide him services. So
yes, ma'am. That's what the family services and health coordinator, she told me that, because that was one of my big things. Mine and my husband. My husband had an IEP his whole school career too. That was one of our biggest things, that we want him to be in a preschool, to be ready for kindergarten.
yeah,
And but we also want him to get the help and not have a negative outlook on education because he's had this bad experience with the preschool. Not saying that it was the teacher or the program itself, it just was not a good fit for my son.
right. And unfortunately, that's where some of you pushing them will come in. And then that is one of the ways that I don't want to say get around it, but that is one of the solutions they're going to provide, is this preschool was offered to him and you declined it. Okay, well, we have documentation that those accommodations did not work for him. We need to come up with an alternative. And that's what it is, because they don't have the staff to be going to everyone's house to provide services, or everyone's individual school. And every school district does it different. The Bay does not have a special needs preschool. They go to the house or the daycare the child is at. So, but their district's not as big as Hancock either, so they don't have as many kids to service. So it's a give and a take. But I would make the formal request in writing. I will make myself a note to pull statute numbers for you as well. They may be on the checklist already made, but just to double check. And I will send that to you in the email as well tonight or first thing in the morning, just to kind of help you. When you can quote the statute, it really just helps move the process along, because again, sometimes the teachers don't know, but if I gave them the statute saying, now Terry Breland at Office of Exceptional Children, she knows the statute, she knows the rules. So 9 times out of 10, if Terry says it, it's quoted. Now that doesn't mean you spoke with her. I don't know who you spoke with, but
It was a receptionist that I spoke with, I think.
Yeah. So that's another request that we could make is, can I please speak with Terry? I would like to, I'd like to have a conversation with her and go up, right? The receptionist doesn't always know. That's not her job to know the law, right? So I will pull those and send those to you just to try to kind of help you give them, feel a little more empowered. But if you saw negative effects and it was documented,
and it was actually recommended through his pediatrician that he be pulled from the program and have more extensive evaluations done. We're actually going through connections in Hattiesburg.
Yeah. That's something too, where when did they evaluate him at the district?
May of last year, and then he started August of last year with the pre-K program. Hold on, baby. And then it was October that I pulled him. So it wasn't a very long period. And before that, sorry, he come in here.
No, you're okay.
Yes, you're on the phone, baby. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
But it was from August to October, and he had previously been at MAP Head Start, and we didn't have the problems that we had.
Right.
So it was the new environment and everything.
That is something too, when you make the request, to have an IEP updated, I would make the request. I would put all of that in there. As you know, in October of 2025, he transferred. Here's why. Here's a letter from his pediatrician stating it was requested through her that he get more evaluations. We are requesting an IEP meeting to have this updated. If the school would like to reevaluate him, I give my consent. as well as we are getting a second opinion from, connections or whatever. But if they know you're going out to get a second opinion and you disagree and you have a letter from a doctor, they take it a lot more seriously.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will pull all of that and I'll get that to you, like I said, tonight or first thing in the morning for you.
I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm going to go eat something, you guys. I know my face is like red as can be. But I hope this was helpful. I know the checklist will be helpful. Hopefully you don't have to use it right away, but just something to reference back at so you're not digging through 45 pages. And we will keep you in the loop on updates. I saw some commentary around maybe some changes coming with IDEA law. So if that happens to go through or passes Senate, Congress, whoever's voting on all that stuff, we will definitely keep you up to date on that. We want to be first to know. We want you to be first to know when it comes to anything with your child's rights. And I will include that survey link in the email. Please take 5 minutes to fill it out if you haven't already, so that we can keep providing support and training any way that we can. Never worry about sending us a message, asking us questions about anything. Kaylee and I both work full time, and then we also have secretary, and we have I am the president, sorry. We have a secretary, a treasurer, we have a parent advocate. So we do have a large board, but Kaylee and I are the two that usually you'll catch on social media. And we do work full time. So if we don't get back to you immediately, we promise we'll get back to you end of day or, early the next day. But never feel like you can't ask us something. If she or I don't know, we will find the answer. So Kaylee, do you have anything, or are your kids hollering in there? Do you want to add anything?
They have paused hollering for like 5 minutes.
They hear Aunt Lily and they come running.
They do. They love you. I think you covered pretty much everything that you have. Time to review it. You can take it home. I think you did a great job.
Okay.
I don't really have any crazy comments.
Thanks. Well, again, if we need to do a part 2 to answer anything else, we will. And with that being said, y'all have a fabulous night. Talk to y'all soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.